Some stories don't need monsters to be terrifying. Sometimes a place is enough. A forest forgotten by maps, avoided by people, where even animals seem to hold their breath. Deep in the hills of an unnamed region, where the fog sits low and the nights arrive faster than expected, there is a forest known only by a whisper, the one that screams. Locals won't speak of it after dark. The paths that once led inside have grown over, as if nature itself is trying to seal it off. Ask anyone nearby, and they'll shrug. They'll change the subject. Children are told never to go near it, not because of wolves or cliffs, but because the forest doesn't want them. Not anymore. But what does it mean when a place becomes feared? Not for what's seen, but for what's heard. What kind of scream makes grown people shiver without knowing why? This isn't a ghost story, it's a mirror, a question, something that invites us to think about fear, about memory, about the land itself, and the sounds we've learned to ignore. Because maybe the forest isn't just screaming in the night. Maybe it's trying to tell us something. It always begins with a silence that feels wrong. Not peaceful, not still, just too empty. The kind of silence that pushes on your chest, that makes you swallow for no reason, that makes your ears ring, not because of sound, but because of the absence of it. That's how it feels standing on the edge of that forest. Locals say it wasn't always like this. 50, maybe 60 years ago, it was just another patch of woodland. Hikers went in. Hunters came back with stories of deer, clean rivers, berries. Families picnicked on the edges. Teenagers lit fires and played music. It was alive, not just biologically, but socially, part of the land. Then the forest changed. Nobody can say when exactly. Some point to a dry summer, others to a strange winter when birds disappeared. There's even a woman in the village who swears the trees moved, not metaphorically, but literally. That the woods shifted a few meters overnight, like a living thing turning in its sleep. It started with small things. Lights seen at night deep between the trunks, whispers without speakers, dogs refusing to go near the trails, birds that flew in but didn't come back out. At first, these stories were just that, stories, until someone heard it. The scream. It's not a human scream. Not exactly. It's something that rides the edge of recognition, like a voice underwater or a memory from a dream. Some say it's a woman, others a child. Some say it's no living thing at all. Just pain, in sound form. It happens randomly, always at night, never in the same place twice. But it's always loud enough to reach the houses nearby, even with the windows closed. People thought it was a prank, that someone was playing recordings hiding in the woods, but no one ever found anything. No speakers, no tracks, just the sound echoing through the trees, and it didn't stop. One by one, the nearby trails were abandoned. The forest swallowed them. Maps weren't updated. Hikers stopped visiting. Even animals seemed to change. Deer no longer passed through. Owls avoided it. Something about the forest made things leave. All things, except the trees. No one ever died in that forest, not officially. But people went missing. It happened rarely, but regularly. A photographer, a university student researching fungi, a father and son trying to camp for the weekend. Their names are still pinned to the bulletin board of the small police station at the edge of the nearest village. Missing posters that have yellowed over time. Photos that have become part of the furniture. Everyone knows they won't be found. No one says it out loud, but it hangs in the air. There are no search parties anymore. Even the police have stopped entering. They send drones sometimes, but the footage is always the same. Trees. Trees that seem to shift as if trying not to be looked at. As if the forest knows it's being watched. You might think it's superstition, rural imagination, but the fear is real. It's thick. You feel it when you talk to people. They don't laugh when you bring up the screams. They look over their shoulders. They change the subject. And the bravest thing you'll hear someone say is this: I don't go near it and I never will. So what is it that lives, or breathes, or lingers in that forest? Some believe it's the land itself reacting to trauma, that something happened decades ago, something violent, buried, never spoken of, and the forest remembers, not metaphorically, literally. That its roots absorbed it, and now it echoes back in pain over and over. Others think it's not of this world at all, that the forest is a thin place, a crack between dimensions, that what screams is not screaming at us, but through us, from a place where sound takes form and memory takes shape, a place that was never meant to touch ours. There's even a theory that the forest isn't haunted at all, that it's awake, a consciousness spread across roots and bark and breath, aware of the damage humans bring, and simply defending itself the only way it knows how, by screaming, by warning, by scaring us away. And maybe that's the smartest theory of all. Because here's the strange thing. Ever since people stopped going in, the forest has grown greener, healthier, richer. From satellite images, it looks perfect, dense, alive, untouched. Maybe that's the point. Maybe the forest isn't cursed. Maybe it's healing. And maybe the screams are not threats, they're please, please stop, please leave me alone, please don't come closer. But we never listen to silence. We only hear it when it screams. There's a strange rule when it comes to places that feel wrong. The more you ignore them, the more they pull at you, like a splinter in the mind. You know something's there, just beneath the surface, something unresolved, something that doesn't want to be forgotten. That's what the forest is, a splinter. For the people who live near it, forgetting is impossible. The scream comes back randomly. Months can pass, even years, without a sound. Then one night, just when the village starts to feel normal again, it happens. Always between midnight and 3 in the morning. Always when the fog is thickest. It doesn't echo like a normal scream. It seems to come from every direction at once. It doesn't rise and fall, it shakes, like it's inside the bones, like it's coming from the ground. Some people say the scream changes depending on who hears it, that for some it sounds like a voice calling their name. For others, it's like metal tearing through the air. And for a few, it's completely silent. They see others reacting, plugging their ears, crying, but they hear nothing. Maybe that's worse. One man, Daniel, a retired forest ranger, once tried to document it. He lived near the edge and set up recording equipment, microphones in the trees, a laptop running 24/7. He was skeptical, curious, maybe a little arrogant. He wanted to prove it was just a sound, just wind or an animal, something explainable. He got one recording, just one. The file is about 13 seconds long. The first 5 are quiet. Then there's a shriek unlike anything you've ever heard, not loud in volume but sharp, like it cuts through thought itself. The last 3 seconds? Silence again. Then the laptop shut off. When Daniel tried to play it back, the audio wouldn't work. The file was there, but it was corrupted. He sent it to a university, where technicians managed to partially recover it. What they found was worse than expected. The scream contained patterns, repeating structures in the waveform, almost like language, not human but too organized to be random, too structured to be nature. They said it looked like a code. The analysis stopped there. The lead technician asked Daniel not to send more recordings, said the lab equipment had started malfunctioning during playback, that people were having headaches, dizziness. One student reported seeing figures in her dorm hallway after listening to it. Daniel deleted the file. He moved away a month later, and yet the forest stayed. Quiet. Waiting. Some believe the scream is an echo of something old, a leftover, an imprint of a death or a trauma so powerful it burned itself into the soil. You hear of similar things in old castles or battlefield ruins, but this is a forest. There's no known tragedy, no massacre, no forgotten war. But there are hints. Old maps show a village near the current forest line. It doesn't exist anymore, not even ruins, just the name. Orvale. No records, no photos. Just a black dot with a name that disappeared after 1912. No one talks about Orville. There's a woman, her name is Clara, who says her grandmother used to mention it. Said it was a place where things went wrong. Crops failed, wells dried, children got sick. The church burned down twice, and then one day the people simply left or vanished. Clara says her grandmother never looked her in the eye when she told that story. Always spoke with her back turned, voice low, like she was afraid something might overhear. Orvale might be gone, but the land remembers. And memory has a way of reaching forward, like a vine growing in reverse. The forest stands over that forgotten village now, trees where homes once stood, roots where streets once ran. It covers everything. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the forest isn't just a forest, maybe it's a tomb. There's something deeply unsettling about that idea, that a place can absorb emotion, that pain can become part of the ground, that the scream isn't a voice but the land itself rejecting what was done to it. And then there are the lights, seen by hikers, police drones, even planes, flickering between the trees, not like flashlights, not like fire, more like pulses, rhythmic, blue, white, sometimes red, floating, moving with intention. No one's been able to trace them. They vanish when approached, but they return when left alone. Some researchers say it's bioluminescent fungus. Others think it's electromagnetic interference, natural gases or visual hallucination caused by infrasound, the kind of sound too low for human ears, but powerful enough to disturb the nervous system. But one thing remains the same. The lights only appear after the scream, as if summoned, or answering. This is the part that bothers skeptics most. Not the scream or the legends, but the patterns, the consistency, the rhythm. It doesn't feel random. It feels timed, measured, as if the forest isn't just reacting, but communicating. And this is where things begin to shift, because what if the forest isn't haunted? What if it's intelligent? Not in a science fiction sense, not like a brain hidden under the roots, but in a wider, stranger way, a collective memory, a shared will, a consciousness that stretches beyond what we define as life. We think of forests as backdrops, as resources, as ecosystems. But what if they're more? What if we've only scratched the surface of what they are, what they remember? The forest that screams doesn't need us to believe in it. It simply continues, screaming, waiting, changing. And the question is, are we willing to listen? Or will we keep pretending that fear is just superstition, that land doesn't speak, that pain doesn't echo? Maybe that's what the scream is trying to tell us, that silence doesn't mean peace. It means we haven't heard the truth yet. You can read all the theories, analyze all the sound files, interview every frightened villager, but nothing compares to standing there in person, right at the edge of the forest. That exact point where the paved road turns into dirt, where the air changes temperature, where the trees seem taller, closer, heavier. As if they know you've arrived. Some who visit say they feel watched even in daylight. Not threatened, just noticed, like a presence studying you, not with eyes but with awareness. The way a room feels different when someone walks in. Except the room is alive, breathing, rooted into the ground. There's no sign, no gate, no barrier, just nature, wild and uninviting. A few months ago, a young documentary filmmaker named Elena came to investigate the forest. She had heard about the scream through online forums, places where people share urban legends, conspiracy theories, or paranormal reports. Most of it, she admitted, was nonsense. But the forest was different. There was something about how consistently people described it, something about the fact that no one was trying to make money from the story. That, she said, was rare. She brought gear, cameras, mics, drones. She planned to spend a weekend just camping near the border, never going inside, just recording, observing, listening. The first night, nothing happened. Just owls, wind, the occasional cracking branch. But sometime after 2 a.m., the audio on her equipment picked up something strange. A frequency, not a sound exactly, but a vibration. When she played it back, she felt sick. Her hands went cold. Her stomach tightened. The file wasn't corrupted, but it made her feel wrong. The next night, it came. Not the scream, something before it. A whisper, like dozens of voices overlapping, too quiet to make out but layered. Urgent. She recorded everything. Then, at exactly 2:47 a.m., it happened. The scream. She dropped the recorder. Ran. She later described it not as a sound, but as an impact, like being hit in the chest with memory. She said it reminded her of a funeral she'd forgotten, a loss she hadn't processed. The scream didn't just hurt her ears, it cracked something inside her. Eleanor left the next morning. She deleted most of the footage. She posted one clip, just trees at night swaying perfectly still, and then a flicker of light behind them. Not a person, not an animal, just a shape, thin, bright, gone in less than a second. She added only one sentence. The forest isn't haunted, it's grieving. And that phrase has stuck with me ever since, because maybe grief can take form. Maybe it doesn't just sit inside us. It spills out, leaks into the world. Especially if it's collective, especially if no one ever acknowledged it. Maybe pain has to go somewhere when no one listens. And maybe, in rare cases, it chooses the trees. There's an idea in certain spiritual traditions that land remembers. That earth absorbs energy, especially trauma. That certain places become wounds, not metaphorically but literally, and those wounds, if left untreated, begin to cry out. But the real question is, what are they crying for? Help? Justice? Witness? Or just silence? It's possible the forest isn't screaming to be heard, but to be left alone, to be allowed to rest, to not be prodded, studied, chased. And if that's true, then maybe we're the problem. Not because we're evil, but because we can't leave mystery untouched. We have this need to explain, to categorize, to tame. But some things aren't meant to be explained. They're meant to be respected. Elena never returned to the forest, but she still talks about it in interviews. She says it made her realize how disconnected we are from land, from nature, from history, that we think forests are passive, that they don't react to our presence. But maybe that's wrong. Maybe nature doesn't scream often, but when it does, it means we went too far. And the forest that screams at night? Maybe it's the loudest warning we've ever ignored. There's another detail that doesn't appear on camera. Elena mentioned it during a podcast. She said that during her last night near the forest, before the scream, she had a dream, a vivid, lifelike dream. She was standing in the woods, and there were no sounds, no birds, no wind, not even breath. Everything was still. Then from behind the trees a figure appeared, not frightening, not grotesque, just human, pale, eyes open, but unblinking. It didn't speak. It just raised a hand and pointed downward, and when she looked, the earth beneath her feet began to crack like skin tearing open, and beneath the dirt, instead of rock or root, there were faces. Eyes wide, mouths open, silent, reaching. She woke up gasping. Was it just a dream, or was it something deeper? A memory not hers, a buried truth. We may never know. But here is the thing. Elena isn't the only one who had that dream. 3 others have reported it, word for word. They never met her, they never read her notes, but they all saw the same thing. And when something like that happens, it's not a coincidence. It's a message. And whether we understand it or not, it's already begun to echo. Not everyone believes the forest is dangerous. Some believe it's sacred, a place not to be feared but honored. They don't call it cursed. They call it alive. There's a man named Ezra, quiet, in his 60s. Lives alone near the outer edge of the forest. No phone, no internet. He moved there after losing his wife, not to run away, but to find something. He says he didn't choose the forest. The forest chose him. Ezra isn't scared of the screams. He hears them, of course. He says they're not meant to harm. They're meant to remind. He believes they're not screams of fear, but of mourning. And he treats the forest like a living being in grief. Every morning, Ezra walks to the edge of the trees. He doesn't go in. He stands, bows his head, and says the same words. I hear you, I see you, I will not forget. He told this to a traveler once, a young woman passing through, curious about the rumors. She stayed the night, listened to Ezra's stories, and then left. But not before writing down those words. Since then, they've appeared across online forums, spray-painted on road signs, even carved into benches near forests around the world. I hear you, I see you, I will not forget. Why do those words matter? Because they're simple, because they're powerful, because they offer something that most of us avoid when it comes to places of pain, acknowledgement. We're taught to pave over pain, to move on, to ignore the places that ache. But that's not how healing works. That's how scars form. And maybe, just maybe, the forest is full of scars, not on trees, but on memory, on energy, on the space between now and then. It's easy to be afraid of the scream. It's harder to ask why it's screaming. And that's the question we must sit with. Why does the forest scream? Is it because something terrible happened? Is it because something terrible keeps happening? Or is it because no one ever came to listen? Some locals believe the scream is fading. softer than it used to be, shorter, less intense. They wonder if the forest is finally being left alone, or maybe it's growing tired, worn out by centuries of silence, worn out by people who only listen when something shouts. But others say that's when things are most dangerous. When the forest goes quiet again. When the scream turns into a whisper. Because if we stop hearing it, we might think it's over and go back inside, start building again, cutting, digging, burning. And then what? Does the scream return? Or does it become something else? Something worse? There are patterns in nature, warnings, cycles, forest fires, earthquakes, floods. We call them disasters. But sometimes they're just resets. Sometimes they're not punishment, but reactions. Maybe the scream is a final warning. Maybe it's the earth saying, "This is your last chance. Leave me be. Listen. Change." Ezra says he once saw something in the forest. Not a ghost, not a creature, just light, moving between the trees like breath. He says it shimmered like heat and shaped itself into a figure. And for a second, he felt everything. Not fear, not sadness, everything. As if the forest had opened a door to every feeling that had ever been left there. Every tear, every cry, every whisper. He says it lasted 3 seconds, and he hasn't felt alone since. Maybe that's what the forest offers to those who approach it with humility. Not answers, but connection. Not fear, but depth. We go through life believing nature is neutral, that it doesn't feel, that it doesn't respond. But what if that's just our projection? What if we've never learned to listen properly? The forest that screams might not be the only one. Maybe there are hundreds, thousands, places where the earth aches under the weight of what's happened. And we ignore it because it doesn't fit our understanding of the world. But that's changing. People are starting to listen again, to feel again, to understand that maybe silence isn't absence, it's potential. It's the moment before a sound, the breath before a scream. And in that breath we have a choice, to keep walking, or to stop, to bulldoze, or to bow, to forget, or to remember. Because once the scream is gone, there may be no more warnings left. So now you've heard the story, not just of a forest, but of a presence. A place that refuses to be forgotten, that dares to speak through the language of fear. But beneath the scream, there's a whisper. One that says something even more important. You are not separate. You are part of this. The scream is not outside of you. It's what happens when something inside you is ignored for too long. Pain echoes, in land, in trees, in people. And every scream, no matter how terrifying, is really just a question. Will you listen now? Will you see what you've refused to see? Will you change? Because maybe the most frightening thing isn't the scream itself. Maybe it's what happens when it finally stops. And we realize we missed our chance to understand.